In an unprecedented move, the Iranian regime has been ousted from the United Nations top women's rights body. The U.S. administration spent weeks asking other member states to remove the Islamist regime in Tehran because of its policies contrary to the rights of women and girls. Canada supported the resolution along with 28 other countries.
We're watching what we have been watching for the last 3 months, and we're seriously being told, well, I'm sorry, we can't do this because it's not appropriate. Well, in Canada's view, what's not appropriate is killing people for their political opinions. It's picking up children and torturing them in prison. It's forcing women to dress in a way that they do not want to dress. And that is incompatible with a commission that calls itself the Commission on the Status of Women.
So how significant is this move, particularly as the Islamic Republic continues to crack down on anti-regime protests in that country? Damon Golriz is a political analyst on Iran and a lecturer at the Hague University. Mr. Golriz, I'd like to start with the news that the regime was ousted from the UN body. How would you characterize this? Is this a meaningful move, or is this purely symbolic?
I'm happy I'm with you, David. Thank you for inviting me. I think it's an important message. I think it's a message. It's a technical move, though, especially on the battle of narratives, which is quite important nowadays. Let me recall the excellent piece that I read on your website about what Western media got wrong last week. So it's an important message. It's a technical message, but it's not very substantial strategically. It doesn't alternate regimes' calculations to continue the murder and the killing, and it doesn't really change things on the ground. What really changes an approach in which human rights concerns are included in the strategic interests during the negotiations that the West is so willing to do on nuclear issue, on the support of the Islamic regime to Putin's war. You know, if you put human rights and the real substantial matters of the people of Iran on the table, then calculation will change, and we will see change of behavior of the Ayatollahs.
Right, putting the interests of the people there, and there was some language to that effect. The resolution, of course, was led by the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and what she said on Twitter was that Iranian women and activists called on us to do this, and today we got it done. What's your reaction to that statement?
I don't think making such claims by a U.S. ambassador is very chic, I would say. I don't think that's a very chic thing to do. What Iranian women and children really want to see is not only a support, verbal support, or a cosmetic support, but also strategical support, as I said. And what it really means is that the concerns of human rights, how the Iranian regime, is trying to suppress the people and their messages, get some kind of interest during this strategical dialogue and negotiations. Don't you forget that last Monday, the European Council, which is the highest entity of European Union, came up with this conclusion on, after years, conclusion on Iran, and it still believes in revival of the JCPOA, which is the nuclear deal, still believes after 2 years that that's the best way forward. That doesn't really give the right signal to Tehran, to the Ayatollahs, that the West is putting pressure from human rights rather to strategic concerns that they have.
So what sort of a message do you think that sends? Because you do have the regime in this situation where it may want to negotiate over the nuclear deal, but also wanting to repress these protests, right? So what kind of a message do you think Europe is sending to the regime with this move?
I mean, this is an important one because it supports the people they think they have some kind of support in their back in the struggle, especially after the recent executions, I think, by the regime, which is, I wouldn't call it execution, is state murder. And what would really change if the European Union follows the line of Canada, not only by putting some members of the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Force, on the terror list, but the whole entity, which is a state in Iran, on the terror list and designated as a terrorist organization. By doing that, many of their people living in Europe, in Canada, will have a big problem, and that will change their calculations, I think.
All of this is happening as the regime is intensifying its crackdown. We've seen the executions, which you've called state murder. We've seen hundreds of people killed just in the crackdown of the protests, these executions after sham trials. How do you interpret this violence in terms of what may happen next as the regime tries to stifle this dissent?
So, as you said, this is a state murder. This is not only execution, because execute someone in only 30 days after they're captured. It's almost impossible to have even a fair trial, even with the standards of the Islamic Republic. So let's talk about what's going on. Closed societies, especially totalitarian states, regimes, in this case, Islamic regimes, survive and rule by the virtue of two important elements. First of all, they divide people by gender, men, women. Think about the scarf and how important such a scarf is as a matter of repression, but also to divide the society, the half of the society as men and the other half as women. But also religion, Shia, Sunni, Christian, Jews, and geography, center and periphery. And by doing that, by doing this division, atomizing the society will bring a clashing between the entities. By bringing a clash and also use the second element, injecting fear and terror, they always try to rule. What's happening in Iran right now, after more than 3 months, is that even after the public execution, there was this beautiful video I saw that a very young girl was walking on the middle of the street of Mashhad, where the young the young detainee was hanged a few hours ago, and walking there without fearless, and try to give this message that she is not afraid of the regime. And we saw also the demonstrations unfolding in Tehran and in other cities. So the first element of terror and fear is not working. The second is that Iranians have never been so united. So atomization strategy of the regime is not working very well. Iranians are quite united, from the Kurds to Arabs, Baluchis in Tehran, men, women, Shia, Sunni. So it's not working for the regime. The regime has a tough time. And these tough times is going to continue because Iranian people, they know that if they stop, they will see, as what they saw in 2019, probably the shutdown of the internet and a mass murder going on the streets.
So on that point, and just before we say goodbye, we are seeing there are going to be more nationwide strikes in the coming days, right? Shopkeepers, businesses, truckers refusing to work. I mean, it seems like they will not relent because of fear of what might happen, as you just outlined. Do you think they can accomplish what they want here and get change at the top in Iran?
Yes, yes. If you look at my country, the Netherlands, the last time the coalition needed time to form a government took them like a year, 300 days. Belgium, it was more than 400 days. And we are in 3 months in Iran. And it's not a democratic Western state, it's a totalitarian Islamic state. It needs time. It needs the movement and the revolution needs time to breathe and to find the right time. And it's cold now. It's winter. So I think in the coming months and weeks, Iranian will see the opportunity to come on the streets, but also to strike and to find more open societies like Canada, like Netherlands, like Europe, like United States, to have their support. And maybe the leaders of these countries change their approach, not only looking at the strategic concerns, but also on human rights values and human rights as part of the negotiations with the Ayatollahs.
Damon Golriz, it was nice to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, David.